Hello, hello, hello. This has been something I've been wanting to do for quite a while now. We'll give it a try, see if fans like it, if people tune in. When's a good time to do these? But I definitely have been wanting to do one of these for quite a while, and a lot of news going on with the Pacers right now. And so here I am, giving it a try. And I am curious. So 10 o'clock at night, I don't know how this might work for a lot of Pacer fans, many of whom might already be in bed here. But nonetheless, I'm here and ready to go and give it a try. I think we're live and good. At least that's part of this is an experiment, quite frankly, to see if it's working, to see if people are on. And yeah, so I encourage you to leave me some comments in the comments section. But all right, we'll get started here and hopefully some people will join and we'll experiment. Hopefully the video and audio sound good as well. Always something to be concerned with as you try something new. But right now, Indiana Pacers with big news here in the last couple of days, being able to re-sign Myles Turner to a contract extension. And I mean, I kind of laugh now looking back in hindsight of so many of the national conversations, so many of the radio interviews, the questions I've answered, all those different things. And so many of them had been surrounded, or the conversation was about, what's Miles's future? Does he want to be here? Do the Pacers even want him here? And looking back at it, you just got to laugh, right? I don't think much has changed other than the Pacers' immediate success. I think that's the biggest thing here is nobody, even those inside the Pacers, were not expecting this year to go as successfully as it has. That's the big difference here. More people showing up. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see that. Feel free to hop in the chat and join me so I'm not just talking to myself, but it was cool this afternoon. Pacers holding a press conference for Myles Turner in the entry pavilion of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And I think that's cool because Myles has seen it evolve over the years. He's been around. He's been on the with the franchise since 2015. Hey, there we go. Jay, me. Yes, Tice is very close to playing. I reported last week on fieldhousefiles.com that he's planning to play this week. So make sure you check out that story for more info about that. But yeah, Daniel Tice getting very close to a return here. He'll get a couple practices in with the team this week as they plan to practice coming up Tuesday and Wednesday. Today was essentially a day off, what the team calls a blackout day, where guys are supposed to remain away and ideally not get work in to truly get a full rest day. But many of the guys were still there. That's why we had about more than a half dozen of them who attended Miles's press conference anyway. I thought it was very notable to see so many guys there. And afterwards, I think I posted the image on Instagram before I jumped on this about an hour ago of the team taking a team photo together of the players as well as some coaches. It was just a really cool moment for Myles after the press conference. And to wrap things up, he grabbed the mic, was like, yo, team employees, let's get a photo together. And so that's when you had the 100 or so employees gather around him at the entry pavilion, take that photo. So that was cool. Appreciate the question. It just says Jamie. Maybe that's what you have your name as, but I do appreciate that question as you kind of broke the seal, and hopefully we'll get a couple more here. Again, it's kind of an experiment for me, seeing if this even works, sounds good, looks good. But I'd like to do more kind of live audio. I could do spaces, some Twitter live spaces. I do like the video aspect. I don't like the editing aspect, which also factors into why podcasts aren't as regular as I'd like to be. It's just, where do you find the time to do all that when it's a one-man band like it is for me? But as I wait for more questions to come in, just again, very cool to see Myles and him to be celebrated a little bit and have this moment for him today. I was disappointed that his parents could not make it. They were stuck in Dallas, flights delayed, so they could not be here for this moment. Chad Buchanan was not there as well. He was out scouting. I think a little bit of that shows you as well is how this wasn't like it was scripted out. This wasn't, planning to be there for a week in advance or anything, or else they would have already been here, right? But because It came together quickly, really over the last 48 hours, talking about from Sat. So really late Thursday into Saturday is when this kind of got done. And then Thursday, when Myles was getting treatment on a massage therapist table, he got the phone call from Austin Brown, his agent, and that's who kind of alerted him, hey, we got what we wanted, got a good deal, your thoughts type of thing. And so that's when everything came together for Myles. And then I think that had to be a special day for him here in Indianapolis to be able to enjoy that. His parents weren't here. It was one of his best friends. Taylor was with him. His manager, not here as well. So I'm sure they will have some big moments coming up where they're able to sit back, celebrate it, enjoy it as a team, and all of that. But Myles has just played so well this season, going back to the true center spot since Domas was traded. Because you got to remember, Myles' season was over in mid-January last year because of that stress reaction in his foot. And then he decided to sit out kind of the rest of the season. And that was what's best for the Pacers, what was best for him and his long-term health, as well as just like a 25-year-old. I think that was a good call. They got a good draft pick. And then, until the start of this season, he wasn't able to play with Tyrese and without Domas. So then things changed. This is his first full season now going with Rick Carlisle as head coach. He had a full off season, was able to get some good work in with Rick as well down in Dallas where they both live. So I thought that was really cool. Hey, getting some more comments. I appreciate it. More people jumping in on here, which I appreciate for this experiment. Ooh, even more. Let's keep it going. I like these comments. And the fact that no one said bad video, bad audio, I assume it's coming along fine and you guys see well. But young GOAT, I feel Myles Turner's breakout season was coming in due time. For sure. You got to remember, big guys progress the slowest. Usually it's the wings, the guards that are the quickest among those. So I really try not to judge bigs until after at least 3 seasons in the NBA. And Myles, now in year 8 on that, going into his 3rd contract with the Pacers, that'll be next year. I think that's notable for one, but also you see where fit means everything. And so with Myles this year, he's back to the main 5. So he's featured more on offense. He feels more a part of things. And then the number one contributing factor in all of this is the point guard, is that he has Tyrese Halliburton that's not only provided joy again to this franchise, but he's really untapped and uncorked Myles and the rest of his teammates for improvement, he's brought confidence to them more than anything. Back to the comments. Yeah, it's going to be tough for Myles to make the All-Star team because they're front court players. They're not separated into bigs and, or centers specifically. And in the East, you got Joel Embiid, who's inevitably going to be a perennial all-star. And so he's kind of your token center. And then from there on else, it's difficult. Now, he's been healthy this year, so that's certainly been in his favor. But there's been several seasons where you couldn't even consider him, I think, due to injuries. But he's having career years, certainly. Obviously, all his numbers suggest that. Hey, more people popping up into this program, so I welcome you and appreciate it. I'm going through some of the comments, so if you have some comments, feel free to leave some. Luis says the Pacers feel they can make the playoffs this year. They're planning ahead. I think we'll get a much clearer picture of that here by not this Thursday, but the next, after the trade deadline on February 9th. What, if anything, do they get involved with? Do they add a piece that's helpful right away or not? I think the way the players look at this season is they want to get to the playoffs, at least to round 1, and see what they can do if healthy. I personally believe this should be one more rebuilding year. I want to see more Isaiah Jackson. I want to see more Jalen Smith. I want to see what Chris Duarte can contribute. Can he find his role on this team? Because the reality is you look at this roster and we can all admit this is not a championship contending roster. So what's the point of being back on that treadmill of mediocrity again, being the 7th, 8th team, or even being 10th and being in the play-in game? You might argue that gets you some experience, some big moments, but I think it'd be much more of a priority, or it should be, to have the 7th draft pick instead of the 16th. That's a significant difference. And on top of that, there's some growing pains, some growth, and would give an opportunity to play some of these young guys even more than they're getting right now. Jamie, am I crazy or is there frustration from Myles towards Heald and Matherin? Those guys. No, I don't think so. I think a lot of what you're seeing is general frustration. If you're specifically talking the last 2 weeks, is look, the guys have lost 11 of the past 12 games. How could you not be frustrated with the way in which things have gone right now? I think you're seeing that a lot. I mean, how many times do we see Buddy audibly? We can hear on the broadcast Buddy yelling at Tyrese and having a back and forth. That's just kind of big brothers. That's kind of guys putting guys in check. I think there's several times where I've seen them do that with Chris Duarte defensively. He missed an assignment or was not in the right spot. Buddy missed a defensive help assignment in the corner, I remember, in a recent game. You want that. You want a talkative team and guys that hold each other accountable, because remember, that's what they have not had for the last couple of years. It's been a quiet locker room. Guys that didn't necessarily not get along, but not guys that wanted to get along. I don't know. It just wasn't a communicative locker room. So I don't know. I don't read anything into all of that. Aaron asked, did I hear Halliburton is a free agent at the end of this year? No. He has one more year under contract. This is year 3 for him. So what can be done is he could agree to a contract extension with the Pacers this summer. I'm sure they'll be prepared to offer him the max contract. That's what he'll want. And, you could meddle over, team options or things like that. Front load it, back load it, those sorts of things. But generally speaking, I think you can all expect a max. He should expect a max, and that's kind of where you're at right now. All right. Yeah, exactly. Sabonis when he was on OKC. Yeah, for sure. Sabonis was misused year 1 with OKC, and that's what the Pacers saw. You're right, young goat. The Pacers saw a player that was being misused, how they could utilize him better, and look, that worked out for both sides there. Andrew Nembhard was an underrated draft pick. You're absolutely right. Yeah, 31st, and he's exceeded all expectations, which were high, by the way, going into this season. But I don't think we expected him to start. I don't think we expected him to play more than 20 minutes per game, and now he's a starter. And the biggest surprise to me is what he's done defensively, and looking forward to the biggest defensive assignment for the Pacers every single game. That's not easy. All right. Why should we want the 7th pick instead of 16th? Shouldn't we aim for more short-term success? Uh, why should we want the 7th? You want the 7th draft pick because you're going to get a way better player than 16th. You should aim for more short-term success, meaning the next couple of years, but not this year. Are you trying to say you expect this team could win multiple series? I don't. So what's the point? I have more of that vision in mind. Yes, Buddy's never participated in the playoffs. Neither has Tyrese Halliburton. And I'm not saying tank, but I'm prioritizing growth is what I'm getting at. I don't think Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith should be on the bench as much as they are. I want to see more of what they can do. Let's try, Benedict Mathurin with different lineups. Let's see what the numbers show after different things like that. That's what I'm getting at. And of course you want the 7th draft pick. That's what this team needs more of, is better picks. Because here's the other thought is after this year, you don't want to be in the lottery again. You've been in there the last couple of years. I say one more time, and then who knows when you'll be back. Remember, they had this last draft pick was their highest in like 35 years in my lifetime. So maybe they'd go back to that. So you want to capitalize while you can, while you're in the lottery. Thanks for answering your question. You're appreciative. You're welcome, Jamie. Happy to help. Can you confirm what Tony has reported regarding the salary floor? Per Tony, the majority of the years was sunk cost. Yeah, I said the same thing. If you read my story at Fieldhouse Files, part of the intrigue of this was the renegotiation aspect of it. It's something that has not been done since 2017. And notably, that was Robert Covington, who is also repped by the same agency that represents Myles now. Myles changed agents a couple months ago, and Myles also acknowledged today that before he was told about it, he wasn't aware of this aspect. And I'm not surprised, because you don't see many players using it because they can. It requires the team to have salary cap space. And I believe the Pacers and the San Antonio Spurs are the only 2 teams with cap space, and both teams have significant cap space. So To get into that just a little bit more, the Pacers had about $25 million of cap space. They had to spend roughly $15 million to get to the salary floor. Now, there was no urgency. They didn't have to do it by the end of this month or by the trade deadline. That's for the fiscal year. And for the NBA, that runs through the end of June. So, for example, they could have made a trade late in the season. They could have done something at the draft where you essentially take on more salary or whatever to make that work. And so they needed to spend 15 million. If they did not, by the way, it's not like you're penalized, but what would happen, current players are probably rooting for it because that 15 million would be split up in a pot and distributed amongst the current team. That way, that's negotiated by the Players Association and the teams, so that teams are spending, they're not getting cheap. And so by advancing the money here for Myles, you do two things. One, you're rewarding him with more money up front. You're still getting him that 58 million is really what he's getting, which could stretch over about 60 million if he hits some bonuses that are unlikely, like a defensive player of the year bonus or all defensive team, for example. But by front loading it, you're coming above the salary floor. And so now they have, I want to say, more than 8 million, almost $9 million they could spend, but they don't have to. But they are over the salary floor, which was a requirement by the end of June, or else they just have to distribute that money. And so that takes care of this. And then it also, what it does is it brings money to this year, and then the Pacers are able to decrease his salary in the future. So for Myles, he's getting all the same money, but he's getting more money up front. And then the notable thing is how he counts against the Pacers' salary cap gets really interesting because now he's roughly the same as he has been, which is roughly 18 million. I think he's 19 or 20 and 21 million moving forward, which also does make it way more intriguing to trade parties if it does cross that bridge. But that's not why they did this. I hope that made sense to you. But thanks for the question, for sure. That's a big up that worked out well both for the Pacers and for Myles. Luis says, I prefer to get experienced players rather than rolling the dice on draft picks. I don't disagree with that. You already should have the Pacers' top draft pick this year, plus Cleveland's pick, plus Boston's pick. Now, the latter two will be at the end. I mean, right now you're talking picks like 27 and 30. Now, they're first round picks, but those are the least valuable first round picks because you rather really have the first pick of the second round where you can give them a non-guaranteed contract, for example. But right now they have three. I think what you could do ideally is package a couple of those picks and maybe a player, try to get up even higher and into the lottery is what you'd be looking at. But the thing is, I mean, right now with the second round pick, you're talking about 4 rookies next season, and that's highly unlikely. So I expect for them to make some kind of trade leading up to the draft to get a higher draft pick or get more experienced players to help bolster the roster to then start making a run next season. It looks like is that Chinese? I'm not sure. Thanks for joining me wherever you are. Saw a lot of discussions on Mathurin. Seems less athletic than his college days. What is your opinion? I don't know where that opinion's coming from, but I highly disagree with that. Have you seen him get to the basket? I don't know who's saying that, but I don't think they've watched Pacers basketball. He's getting like what feels like 10 free throws per game. He's attacking the rim, looks big, doesn't back down from opponents, is fearless. No, he's doing quite well. What pieces do the Pacers need? They need a Paul George, basically. The 3-and-D type, a guy that could get you 40, but is also going to take on the opponent's best player. They've needed that player for several years now, that 3-and-D guy. Now, Aaron Nesmith's been better than the Pacers expected by far, and he's still got a long ways to go. Remember, he's only in his third year, like Jalen Smith, like Tyrese Halliburton. I guess more like Jalen Smith. They're all in that same draft class. They were picked within 4 places of each other. But unlike Tyrese has gotten the experience, whereas Jalen and Nesmith have not. So now we're seeing Nesmith blossom because of the additional playing time. K-Bunch, appreciate the thoroughness. You got it, man. Makes more sense to overpay. I wouldn't call this an overpay for him. I could make a valid argument that Myles settled a little bit with this contract. The reason I don't think he did is because consider this. I think ultimately his goal probably would have been to get to this offseason, to become an unrestricted free agent and to have options. The trouble is not many teams were going to have cap space, and very few teams were going to have enough cap space to give him, say, $30 million per year for 2 years, which is what he's getting here. Now, how they structured the contract, yes, he's getting more this year, and then it's falling back into 20 and 21 million over the next 2, but another team could not do that. That was unique to the Pacers. So I think the other thing, I guess, to be fair, is he could have, say, signed a 4-year deal with another franchise and, say, gotten like $100 million, got more guaranteed, but less annually. And considering this, I think this was a good play for him, assuming he was good with the less guarantees and with his health status, because he'll be 29 next time he hits free agency. And that summer is when everybody in the league is anticipating new money, a huge amount of new money entering the league from a new TV deal. So what will that mean? It will mean that players will get paid more. It'll mean that the salary cap goes up. It means that teams spend more. And so maybe it's as simple as him signing a new contract in 2 more years, and it's for the same number. But to the teams, it feels more like 10 or 15 million. To him, it's still another 60 million, right? So those are the things that both sides have to consider. But I think it was wise for Myles to at least get this extension done now, considering the landscape this summer. Outside of like the Spurs, I'm not sure what team could have spent decent amount of money on him. Could have potentially done a sign and trade that would have been available, much like Pacers and Malcolm Brogdon, where he re-signed with the Bucks for a trade to the Pacers because they were not going to re-sign him. That would have been a mechanism that could have worked. All right, let me take a couple more questions here. Thanks for joining me. If you've come in here in the last few minutes, but just bopped in. For one, this is kind of an experiment, seeing how you guys like this, seeing if this works. I haven't got any issues, it sounds like, with the video, with the audio. So I do appreciate that as notifications come in here to my watch. Luis has another question. How's Larry Bird doing? He's still advisor. Man, you don't subscribe to Fieldhouse Files, do you, Luis? I reported in July. Larry Bird no longer has a real role, an everyday role with the franchise. He's been a consultant since stepping down in 2017. That was on May 1. Really has not been around the team, I don't know, since the pandemic, especially the last couple of years. But now he's off the books. He's no longer paid by the franchise. He's not part of the staff. Doesn't have an email address with the franchise anymore. That guy is just away from basketball and living life, and good for him. I believe he's still in Naples. I haven't talked with him since, I don't know, it's been over a year since Rick came back. The night Rick was hired, I called him to see if he had a reaction, because I know he was involved in that to some degree, kind of connected guys, serving as the connector between the Pacers and Kevin Pritchard and getting Rick here. But no surprise that he didn't want to talk, didn't want to take any credit. And he's just living life. He's a grandpa now. That's probably the best update I have for you. Hey, you bet. Appreciate it, Luis. But you didn't know about Larry, so make sure you go subscribe to fieldhousefiles.com, even if it's just the free part. You don't have to pay, but I would highly suggest it, because that's where you're going to get most of the work. But check out fieldhousefiles.com. That's where all my written content goes. I don't have anything from the presser just yet today, because I'm working on a thorough, big feature, big picture item. I want to talk to a couple more people before publishing that. Yeah, appreciate it, Luis. I will say, doing this by yourself, you don't really get a chance to stop or take a break. That's where it is nice having a guest or bouncing it off people. All right, one last call, final call for questions, and then I'm going to bop out of here, get back to writing my story here from Myles. And today, Pacers with a couple days between games, 3 in fact, 2 more. A couple practice days coming up Tuesday, Wednesday, then the Lakers on Thursday, Sacramento Kings on Friday. And if I think Tyrese is going to play. Yeah, he's not going to miss that Kings game. I would be very surprised by that. Pacers do have to be cautious, have to make sure he checks out and gets cleared, but right? You have to be thinking like I am. No way he's missing that. Do I think OG is worth using 3 first-round picks for? I was told it might even take 4 for OG. As for OG, I think a lot of that would depend on where those picks are. If 2 of those include the 2 from Cleveland and Boston that are into the first round, I'll happily include those 2. Um, Depends where that third one's at. Is it theirs? Is it theirs this year? Because I'd like to get that. I'd like for the Pacers to keep their own this year. I would consider doing those 2 picks in a future one. Um, OG's a good player. I don't think he's an all-star. He might be coming up. Pacers could have had him in the draft. Remember that? That was the 2018, I want to say. They had him graded as a second round pick, like most teams, just because of the ACL injury and his limited time at IU. But he's certainly played well above his draft spot, like many players. And I know a lot of teams would like him, and that's exactly the type of player the Pacers need. From a media standpoint, he's no good, not a good interview, but the Pacers need somebody like him. I really like this basic trade format. Is the OG trade going to happen? I don't think it's likely, not with the Pacers. I think right now, anybody that tells you what Toronto's doing doesn't exactly know. I don't think they've exactly signaled what they're doing because there's more than OG. I think Fred VanVleet's perhaps the most likely candidate to get moved or something. He's got a contract coming up, so that's something they must decide on. Nick Nurse, the head coach, coaching staff. Some in Toronto believe Nate Bjorken, who's gone back and been on his staff once again and one of the top assistants there, front of the bench in terms of coaching. Maybe he's caused some issues there as well. I don't know. That's what league people talk about when I ask about Toronto. I don't think the Pacers, I think that will be too rich for them if OG would become available. I think there's other teams that could provide better authors. All right, let me wrap this one up. I already went about 10 minutes longer than I expected. This is the first one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Did have more people pick up as we went. I'd like to do more of this. Maybe I'd bring on guests. I don't know. It's kind of an experimental phase, but thanks for joining me. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe at Fieldhouse Files, fieldhousefiles.com. Promise you this week, Fieldhouse Files podcast, there will be a new episode as well. Subscribe to this channel too if you've not. But anyway, thanks for following me. It's a big day for Pacers. I'm happy for Myles Turner. I'm happy for his family. Big payday for him. 2 more years guaranteed contract. And for the Pacers, it's continuing on. Kevin, I asked Kevin, what are we doing here? Is it a rebuild? Something else? He was like, hey, it's a rebuild. I don't know what that means. They're still trying to figure that out, and so am I. Good night, everybody.